At the family brunch honoring her late grandmother, 39-year-old Leah Davis sat quietly as her younger sister Nicole raised a glass and announced, "I'll be moving into the lakehouse next month." The room applauded. Their father offered a toast to fresh chapters, and their mother beamed with pride. Leah's face remained still, her grip tightening around her glass. That house was supposed to be hers. She had maintained it for years, kept it from falling apart, planted the garden her grandmother loved. And now not a single word had been said about her. Not a thank you, not a mention, just silence. Mark, her partner, gave her a soft squeeze under the table but didn't speak. Leah didn't need to say anything, not yet, because tucked inside her purse, sealed in a protective sleeve, was the original will. Signed, dated, witnessed. What her family didn't know, Leah came to brunch prepared. Leah Davis was 39 years old and had spent the better part of her adult life designing outdoor spaces that made other people feel at home. A landscape architect based in Asheville, North Carolina, she found solace in nature, symmetry, and the quiet comfort of routine. But nothing grounded her more than the lake house, her grandmother's pride, and the only place where Leah ever truly felt seen. From the moment she could hold a trowel, she helped her grandmother in the garden, planting rows of hydrangeas, tulips, and lavender along the wraparound porch. Her grandmother often whispered, "This house will be yours someday, sweetheart. You're the only one who loves it like I do." After her grandmother passed, Leah took over the upkeep without hesitation. She painted the shutters by hand, replaced broken tiles in the kitchen, even used her own savings to fix a plumbing leak in the crawl space. The rest of the family offered vague gratitude but never helped. Leah assumed her efforts were understood, even appreciated. When she asked about the will, her father Thomas always said, "It's all being handled," Mother Marjorie deflected with, "Don't worry, Leah, you'll be taken care of." Nicole, Leah's younger sister by 5 years, was the opposite in every way. Glamorous, ambitious, always moving to a new job or relationship, she lived in a high-rise condo in New York City and only visited the lake house on holidays, often complaining about the bugs, the drive, or the outdated furniture. Their parents adored her. Nicole's Instagram wife gave them bragging rights at dinner parties. Leah was the steady daughter, the one who stayed close, who helped when her parents had surgery or needed a ride to the doctor. But in their eyes, that reliability never earned her spotlight. It only made her invisible. Mark, Leah's longtime partner, was kind and stable, a math teacher at the local high school. He admired Leah's work ethic and gentleness, but didn't understand her emotional attachment to the lake house. When Leah shared her worries, how no one mentioned the will lately, how her grandmother's voicemails seemed to vanish from her phone, Mark would offer comforting platitudes. "Don't borrow trouble." He thought she was being dramatic, maybe even a little paranoid. That stung more than he realized. Then came the small signs. Leah noticed a folder labeled Grandma Estate disappear from the filing cabinet at her parents' house. A voicemail from her grandmother, saved for years, suddenly vanished after Leah mentioned it in passing. Nicole slipped up once at dinner, referencing a lawyer meeting she wasn't supposed to know about. Leah's stomach tightened. Something wasn't right. Still, she hoped she was wrong. She hoped the family she had trusted wouldn't betray her. But deep down, a quiet voice grew louder. She knew her grandmother would never disinherit her. Leah began gathering anything she could. Bank statements, old emails, photos of repairs she'd done, and the only thing that mattered, a signed copy of the original will her grandmother gave her in a sealed envelope years ago, just in case. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her mind. "People will forget what you said and what you did, but they'll remember how you made them feel. Don't ever let anyone make you feel small." Leah was done feeling small. Something was coming, and this time, she would not stay quiet. After the brunch, Leah couldn't shake the tightness in her chest. Something felt wrong. Deeper than disappointment, heavier than heartbreak. That afternoon, she called the family's estate lawyer, a man named Richard Crawley, who had handled her grandmother's affairs for years. She requested a copy of the will. Richard hesitated before saying, "There was a revision signed about 6 months before your grandmother passed. That version leaves the lake house and remaining assets to Nicole." Leah's pulse spiked. That didn't make sense. Her grandmother hadn't even spoken to Nicole for over a year at that point. They'd argued over money, something about Nicole asking for a loan and being refused. It had ended in silence, not reconciliation. Leah requested a scanned copy. When it arrived, the signature at the bottom chilled her. It was similar, but the loops were off. The pressure in the pen stroke looked different, less confident. It wasn't her grandmother's hand. Leah confronted her mother first. Marjorie's tone grew sharp, defensive. "What are you implying, Leah? That your grandmother didn't know her own mind?" When Leah pressed, Marjorie added, "We all agreed this was the best choice. Nicole's starting a family. You don't even have children." Nicole wasn't any more subtle. "You know Grandma wanted what was best for the family," she said, offering no explanation for the broken relationship that had never healed. "It's not about ownership. It's about legacy." Leah turned to Mark, hoping for grounding, but he just sighed and rubbed his temples. "It's not worth tearing the family apart over. Maybe it's time to let it go." But Leah couldn't. She knew what she felt. And more importantly, she knew what she remembered. She dug through her external hard drive that night, looking for backups of old voicemails. Years ago, when her grandmother's health began to decline, Leah had saved messages, photos, even short video clips. It took hours, but she found a trumped. An old voicemail dated just 4 months before her grandmother passed. The voice was unmistakable. "Don't worry, darling. I don't care what the others say. The house will always be yours. I've made sure of it." Leah sat frozen, tears running down her face, not from sadness, but from vindication. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was betrayal, calculated, deliberate. She replayed the message over and over, the warmth in her grandmother's voice wrapping around her like armor. Nicole's smugness, her mother's evasiveness, Mark's passivity. It all crystallized. Leah wasn't just facing another round of favoritism. She was facing forgery. She emailed the audio file to herself. Then she scanned the new will again, marking every oddity. The mismatched notary stamp, the different formatting, the absence of any witness signature she recognized. Her instincts were no longer just emotional, they were factual. This wasn't about being dramatic. It was about being right. Leah had been underestimated her entire life, seen as soft, sentimental, naive. But now, with proof in her hands and the truth in her heart, she felt something new rise inside her. She wasn't going to walk away. She was going to fight. Leah sat in the back of a quiet cafe, the sound of espresso machines humming in the distance, as Julia Winters flipped through the documents. Julia was a forensic handwriting expert and probate attorney recommended by a friend of Mark's. Leah had come prepared. The scanned wills, the lakehouse deed, the voicemail, photos of the notarization stamp that didn't match previous documents. She had even highlighted specific inconsistencies in ink density and stroke pattern. After nearly an hour of quiet analysis, Julia looked up and said it plainly. "The revised will is a forgery. Your grandmother didn't sign this." And the deed transfer? It was notarized remotely, by a proxy, not in person. That's illegal unless the original signer is present on camera, and even then, with a witness. Leah's stomach turned, but not from shock, from confirmation, Julia continued. "If this was orchestrated by your sister and your mother, we have a strong case. We'll challenge the will in probate court, file a motion to halt any transfers, and submit the voicemail as digital testimony. I'll also request a forensic review of the notary log. If we find a discrepancy, we'll subpoena the proxy." Leah sat back, processing. It was one thing to suspect foul play. It was another to prove it. And now, she could. But with that proof came a weight. It meant facing her mother in court. It meant accusing her sister of fraud. It meant the family name, already brittle, might shatter completely. She went home and sat by the fireplace, Mark reading in silence nearby. She didn't mention Julia's findings yet. She needed to think. The next afternoon, she stopped by her parents' house to drop off some photos of her grandmother. Nicole's son, Ethan, was in the kitchen, playing with a tablet. He didn't notice her at first, but as she turned to leave, she heard him say to his little cousin, "Mom says crazy Aunt Leah thinks the lake house is hers." He laughed. Leah didn't say a word. She just stood still, the insult curling around her like smoke. Not because it was cruel, but because it echoed. That phrase, "crazy Aunt Leah," wasn't his. It was passed down, inherited, like china or property. Except in this case, it was the family's legacy of control. That night, Leah opened a blank document on her laptop. She titled it, "Legal Statement." She typed everything: the voicemail transcript, the analysis, the evidence timeline. She saved it with a password. The next morning, she called Julia and said, "Let's proceed." Mark was quiet when she told him, but nodded. "Just promise me, you'll protect yourself." Leah didn't answer right away. Because this time, she wasn't protecting just herself. She was protecting her grandmother's legacy, her truth, and the voice they tried to silence. She realized they hadn't just stolen a house. They tried to erase her entirely. And now, she was going to make sure they never forgot who she was again. The courtroom was quiet as Leah stepped inside, her heels echoing softly against the tile floor. Julia walked beside her, calm and composed. Across the aisle, Nicole wore a designer blazer, her makeup immaculate, her posture stiff with confidence. Her attorney leaned in to whisper something that made her smirk. Marjorie sat between them, arms crossed, eyes trained on the floor. She didn't even glance at Leah. The case opened with routine introductions, but it didn't take long for Julia to take the lead. She projected the scanned copies of both wills side by side. She highlighted the inconsistencies in signature flow, pressure, and angle. The judge leaned in. Then came the deed transfer. Julia explained the proxy notary setup and presented records showing Marjorie had signed off without Leah's knowledge. Despite Leah being the legal caretaker of the property for over a year, the courtroom held its breath. And then Leah pressed play. The voicemail rang out over the speakers. Her grandmother's soft, affectionate voice filled the room. "Don't worry, darling. The house will always be yours. I already told the lawyer. It's settled. You've taken such good care of it." The judge asked to hear it again, twice. Each time, Nicole's face paled. Her attorney rose to object, claiming it was hearsay. But the timestamp, metadata, and voice ID were all confirmed. It stayed on record. Then came the notary. Subpoenaed and clearly sweating, they admitted they were paid cash under the table for what was called a quick job, a last-minute deed change, notarized without the signer present. They reluctantly confirmed it was arranged by Nicole and someone using the name M. Davis. Marjorie remained expressionless, but her silence now felt incriminating. The case was clearly unraveling. But despite the legal wins, Leah felt broken. During a recess, she passed her mother in the hallway. Marjorie turned away without a word. Nicole, walking past with her attorney, mouthed, "You always ruin everything." That night, Leah sat in the lake house, the courtroom echoes still ringing in her ears. The hydrangeas she planted swayed outside the window. Inside, everything felt still, too still. Mark had sent a short message, "Let me know when it's over." No encouragement, no comfort, just distance. Leah sobbed quietly into a throw pillow her grandmother had cross-stitched. The family she had fought so hard to honor had cast her out completely. And Mark, the one person she thought would understand, was retreating. She walked outside into the garden. Her hands touched the soil she had turned over every spring. She ran her fingers along the bench she restored by hand. In the quiet, she heard her grandmother's voice, not just in the recording, but in memory, laughing over tea, praising her new trellises, hugging her close before long drives home. This wasn't about winning a court case anymore. It was about holding on to the one person who had never asked Leah to be someone else. She wiped her tears and stood taller. They had forged a lie, but Leah would protect the truth, even if she had to do it alone. The court's decision came down on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. The judge's voice was calm, but firm. Probate fraud had occurred, the revised will was invalid, and the lake house was legally restored to Leah Davis. Nicole sat frozen beside her attorney. Marjorie stared straight ahead, as if by not reacting, she could undo the verdict. Leah didn't smile. She just closed her eyes and breathed in the quiet satisfaction of justice. Within a week, legal proceedings began against both Nicole and Marjorie. They were charged with attempted asset transfer through forgery and faced a formal investigation by the state bar. The notary involved in the false deed transfer testified fully, confirming Leah's account. Word spread fast through their community. Social invitations dried up. Nicole, once the star guest at every fundraiser, found herself quietly uninvited. Marjorie was asked to step down from 2 charity boards. Their names now came with whispers. Leah no longer tried to silence. But Leah didn't seek headlines. She sought healing. She invited a small circle of friends and neighbors who had supported, some from town, others from her gardening club, for a quiet Sunday gathering at the lake house. She served her grandmother's favorite tea blend with lemon cake and played old jazz records on vinyl. She stood on the porch, looked out at the lake, and knew this was what she'd fought for. Not just bricks and wood, but peace. She had a new wooden sign carved and placed near the front gate, Glenna's Legacy. Her grandmother's name, etched in soft curves beneath hand-painted dogwoods. The house had finally become what it was always meant to be, a living memory. Mark, who had grown increasingly distant during the court proceedings, came by one evening. He said he didn't feel comfortable with how public everything had become. "Disconnection," he told her. "This isn't you." Leah didn't argue. She just said, "Maybe you never really saw me." He left without saying goodbye, and Leah didn't chase after him. That night, she took every item in the house that had come from her parents, vases, picture frames, linens, and packed them into boxes. Some she donated, others she left by the curb. She replaced the old family portraits with artwork from local women artists, landscapes, abstract expressions, and paintings of wildflowers. She wanted the home to feel alive, not haunted. She began journaling again. What started as a personal reflection slowly turned into structured chapters. A memoir began to take shape, one that wove together inheritance, silence, favoritism, and resilience. Julia encouraged her to keep writing. "Your voice matters more than you realize," she said. Leah smiled, remembering how she used to whisper when she wanted to scream. A local newspaper reached out asking for an interview. They had followed the case quietly and wanted to highlight the story as part of a series on women reclaiming property rights. At first, Leah hesitated, but then she remembered every time she'd been told to stay quiet. She agreed. The article came out a month later, under the headline, "Rooted in Truth: How Leah Davis Reclaimed Her Grandmother's Legacy." It included a photo of her standing beneath the Glenna's Legacy sign, hands in her pockets, sun filtering through the trees. Nicole sent her a short email after the story ran. No apology. Just, "I hope you're happy now." Marjorie's came a week later. "Can we please talk?" Leah didn't respond. She blocked both numbers. They had their chance to speak honestly. They chose lies. Leah's revenge wasn't fiery or dramatic. It wasn't about dragging anyone through the mud. It was steady, intentional. She didn't fight to destroy them. She fought to restore herself, to honor the woman who raised her with love and taught her the value of stillness and strength. Now, as Leah watered the new rose bush by the front porch, her grandmother's favorite variety, she felt no bitterness, just power, quiet, rooted, and entirely her own. Leah's life didn't shift overnight, but little by little, things began to grow, not just in the silly soil around Glenna's legacy, but in her sense of self. She started teaching weekend gardening classes to local kids. showing them how to plant vegetables, build pollinator beds, and care for the earth the same way her grandmother had taught her. Their laughter filled the once silent porch. It reminded her that new roots could always be planted. Her memoir, tentatively titled Inheritance Without Permission, caught the attention of a small publishing house focused on women's narratives. They saw the power in her story, the quiet betrayal, the strength it took to speak up, and the grace with which she carried her name through the fire. The book deal gave her something deeper than validation. It gave her a platform. With the first advance payment, Leah established a nonprofit fund in her grandmother's honor, Glenna's Legacy. Its mission was simple: provide legal access to women navigating will disputes, asset theft, or coercion in elder care. It started small, one lawyer volunteering once a month, a few clients referred through social workers. But word spread. And Leah found herself connecting with women across the country, and who had been written out of estates, silenced during funerals, or erased from family narratives. Leah wasn't just healing. She was giving others the tools to do the same. She was invited to speak on panels about estate protection, sibling rivalry, and family betrayal. At one event, a woman approached her and whispered, "You're the reason I challenged my brother. I didn't even know I could." Leah nodded. That was the point. Her pain had become her purpose. She updated her own will, clearly, carefully, and legally ironclad. In it, she left the lakehouse in trust to support Glenna's legacy, but added one personal clause. Her nephew Ethan, should he ever need sanctuary, would always be welcome. Despite everything, she wanted him to know there was a door he could walk through if he ever needed to. 2 years later, she received a letter in the mailbox. The handwriting was unfamiliar, but hesitant. It was from Ethan. He apologized. He said he hadn't known what he was repeating, hadn't understood what was really happening. He wrote, "I called you crazy because that's what they told me. But you were the only one who told the truth." Leah sat on the back steps, the letter in her lap, and wept. She forgave him. She never forgot. But she didn't have to. Nicole got married the next spring. Leah didn't attend. There was no dramatic refusal, just silence. She no longer celebrated holidays with her parents. Instead, she hosted her own dinners, full of friends, colleagues, and neighbors who had become chosen family. There was no performance, no forced civility, just warmth, honesty, and a table set with intention. Glenna's photo still hung in the hallway, but now it was surrounded by the faces of other women who had fought for their names, their land, and their voice. The house had become a symbol of what could be protected and what should never be stolen again. Leah no longer walked quietly. She walked rooted, present, and without apology. She didn't need her family's approval. She had something better, a legacy she earned, a truth she defended, a home no one could take from her again. 3 years later, Leah stood on the lakehouse porch sipping coffee as the early sun scattered gold across the lake. It was quiet, peaceful, the kind of morning her grandmother would have loved. The wind moved through the trees the same way it had when Glenna used to hew lullabies and rub circles into Leah's back. Time hadn't erased the memories. It had simply softened the edges. The house no longer echoed with the sting of betrayal. It was filled with laughter now, with dog toys scattered near the hearth, stacks of books by the armchairs, and rows of blooming lavender just beyond the porch rail. Leah had made it her own, not through decoration, but through energy. Every corner breathed calm. Every room carried healing. She received emails every week from women across the country. Some thanked her for speaking out. Others shared their own stories of stolen inheritances, broken trusts, or family silence. Most weren't looking for advice. They just needed to be heard. They needed someone to go first. Leah always replied, even if just to say, "You're not alone." She never set out to be brave. She used to just want to belong, to feel like her voice mattered in the place she came from. But now she understood something deeper. Belonging wasn't something granted by others. It wasn't earned through obedience or keeping quiet. Belonging was something you claimed, and when it was stolen, you fought for it. Not to be included, but to reclaim your truth. Leah didn't miss her mother's voice. She didn't crave Nicole's approval. The ache that once pulled at her had changed. It wasn't about family roles or lost relationships. It was simpler now. She missed her grandmother's hands, the smell of warm biscuits in the oven, the way Glenna told stories by the fire, weaving lessons into legends, always ending with a gentle kiss to Leah's forehead. And in some way, she hadn't lost any of that. Because every decision she made now came from that same place of care, clarity, and intention. She planted the same flowers Glenna once did. She made tea in the same chipped porcelain cups. She told stories on the porch swing to local girls who came for garden lessons, reminding them that their voices mattered, even if no one else had ever told them that before. The lake house had become a living memory, not a monument to what was taken, but a celebration of what was kept. Strength, truth, heritage. Every morning, Leah walked the perimeter of the property barefoot in the grass, the way her grandmother used to. And every night, she lit a candle by the kitchen window before bed, whispering, "Still here, Gran." Not out of grief, but gratitude. The world outside hadn't changed much, but Leah had. She no longer questioned her worth, no longer softened her voice to be accepted. Her story had grown far beyond the walls of the house, and yet, this porch, this wind, this earth, it would always be home. They told me I was lucky to be included, that I should be grateful just to sit at the table. But the truth was, I was the one holding the legacy all along. My name is Leah Davis. My family tried to erase me from the lake house my grandmother promised me. They rewrote her will, forged her name, and smiled through brunch while pretending nothing had changed. They said I was emotional. I called in a forensic team. They tried to silence me with guilt, with isolation, with lies dressed up as what's best for the family. But they forgot something important. My grandmother taught me how to listen to the truth and how to plant roots deep enough that no storm could move them. If anyone ever tells you you're overreacting, look closer. If they say you're being too sensitive, dig deeper. Because sometimes what they're really afraid of is you discovering exactly what you were meant to inherit. This wasn't just about a house. It was about memory, voice, and reclaiming a place that was mine. Not because I demanded it, but because I earned it. Subscribe to Veiled Fury for more stories of women who don't just survive betrayal, they rise from it. They don't wait to be given permission. They don't wait to be invited. They claim what's theirs. And if you've ever been made to feel like you don't belong, remember, you were never the problem. You were just never meant to shrink to fit their story.